a hockey romance. The whole series, they're all hockey players. So if hockey romance is not your thing, or you've read too many because it's what the industry's favoring right now, and you're like, oh, I can't do another hockey romance, well, maybe it's not for you. But out of all the hockey romances that we've read, it's one of the better ones. They actually play hockey for one. Hi everyone, I am Bear the Human and that's Professor the Bear, and today we are doing a deep dive unhinged recap of the Playing for Keeps series by Becka Mack. For With Me came out just under 2 months ago and I heard about it from Hannah Grace because I was going to do a deep dive review into Daydream, which I'm still going to do. Then I made the mistake of reading Consider Me, and then it's on a technicality. Technically, structurally, the writing is okay, it's average, but character development wise and story wise, there's something in here. It's addictive. I could not stop reading because you can't just read Consider Me. You can't just read Consider Me. No, you have to just binge read them all. I read all 4 in 4 days, 1 book each day. I just couldn't put them down. They were just such easy reads. I just powered through them, and then they get better as well. Like Consider Me, I don't like when authors break the 4th wall and involve the reader. It's just like, oh, if you're wondering whether or not I'm talking about Olivia or food, the answer is both. You guys should know me by now. And it's like, don't involve me. I'm here to observe. I'm not here to get involved in your relationship. Do not perceive me, Carter. Do not reference me. But in saying that, by the time we got to the final book, For With Me, I actually kind of liked it. Yeah, I'm here. Involve me. I also like that the supporting characters who eventually end up being the main characters of the other books, they're not just written about once and then forgotten about. Like, everyone's involved. Like, by the time we're reaching the 4th book, we're getting updates on everyone's lives and it just feels so cohesive. So like, even though you might read Consider Me and you might think, oh my god, why do we care about building so many different relationships? By the end, you're like, oh my god, I'm so glad we did that. Thank you, Becca, because now I just feel like I'm in a cohesive whole family. It's like a warm hug. And now, when I've started rereading Consider Me, now I have fresh eyes. I'm liking this a lot more because Consider Me, out of all of them, it's my least favorite. It's at the bottom. Not because it's bad, just because it's her first book and she gets better and she improves. And this book isn't bad, it's just out of all 4 of them, not my favorite. Last thing I'm gonna say in the spoiler-free section is that it's a hockey romance. The whole series, they're all hockey players. So if hockey romance is not your thing, or you've read too many because it's what the industry's favoring right now, and you're like, oh, I can't do another hockey romance, well, maybe it's not for you. But out of all the hockey romances that we've read, it's one of the better ones. They actually play hockey for one. We actually get games, so that's nice. So the first book in the series is called Consider Me. They're all dual POV, but this is Carter and Olivia's story. So Carter is captain of the Vancouver Vipers, which is an ice hockey team in the NHL, and he's one of the highest paid players, and he's described as ostentatious in every single book. He's like very over the top, but because he's rich, he doesn't know who's dating him for his money, so he's never dated. He's just like, oh, well, I'll just focus on hockey, because that's what my dad said. My dad just said, focus on hockey. So he's never dated, and he's a class A fuckboy. And in fact, chapter 1 opens with him being like, get out of my house, please. We've finished our interaction, and I need you to leave now. To some random person who he doesn't even really remember her name. And Olivia is a PE teacher at a high school, and she also did hockey in her youth, but because of an injury couldn't pursue it professionally. So they both skate, and that's beautiful. It's good to share hobbies with your partner. So they end up meeting each other because best friend and teammate Emmett is having a birthday party for his girlfriend Kara, and Kara's like, thanks for coming, thanks for supporting your best friend, support me, because Kara's just like wild child, like she's just so out there. She ends up punching someone in book 4. She's just a badass, and he's just like, yeah, sure, happy birthday, here's your present. And she's like, just so you know, if you go near my best friend, I'll cut your balls off. And he's just like, that's fine, because I'm Carter Beckett and I can literally sleep with anyone in this bar if I wanted to. I don't need your best friend. Cut to, he's sitting at the table drinking, his eyes go to the bar, and he sees this brunette, and he's like, oh, I might try something with that brunette. And Emmett's just like, not that one, mate. And he's like, nah, I'm gonna slide in there. So then he goes to the bar, and he's just like, oh, you know, can I buy you a drink? And she's just like, I'm not interested, Carter. And he's like, of course you know who I am. And she's just like, yeah, and I'm not interested, fuckboy. And he's just like, I love a challenge. And then he finds out that she's the best friend that he can't have, and he's like, but I want. He's very, throughout the whole series, he's very much, if I want it, I will get it. It's kind of giving only child syndrome, except he's not an only child. His sister Jenny is the love interest in book 2 with Garrett, who's also on the team. So throughout the whole book, he's trying to woo her, and she's just like, again, like, I understand that there's this chemical attraction between us, but your reputation precedes you, and I'm not going to be another notch on your bedpost. And he's like, you won't be. Like, I know it's you. I said that I would settle down when I found the right girl, and you're the right girl for me. And she's just like, but how do you know that? Because you've never dated. So how would you know the feeling of, and he was like, well, I don't know. I might not know the feeling of what being in love is like and dating, but I know that what I feel for you is different from what I felt from like everyone else. And she's just like, okay, well, how am I going to build that trust when I've just come out of the bathroom and you're touching a fan who's come up to you? And he's like, well, that's just part of the job. Fans come up to me. And she's like, Carla, be for real right now. Like, you can at any point say, don't touch me. Like, at any point, draw a boundary. Say, sorry, I have a girlfriend. Don't touch me. It's inappropriate. And he's just like, huh, can I do that? And she's like, yes, please do that, because if you don't do that, that makes me uncomfortable. So then he starts going around, and anytime they're out and a fan approaches him, he's like, I have a girlfriend. They do finally get together, and it gets hot and steamy. And he's like, oh, you know, I wish I could hold on to this forever. And she's like, take a picture. So then they start taking pictures, morons, and keeping them on his phone. So then you're thinking, okay, well, they've gotten together. They get together about here. Here's when they get together. And then the rest of it, you're just like, okay, so what's like the next stumbling block? Because for ages, just going well. No, because book 3, Adam. So Adam is another person on the team. And here's the thing. Adam in book 1 is dating Courtney, his high school sweetheart. Except not so sweetheart anymore. She stopped coming to after party drinks. She stopped coming to hangouts. She's hardly ever around. And everyone's kind of like, what's going on with Courtney? Eventually, Adam breaks up with Courtney because he finds out that she's been cheating on him. But anyways, because Courtney cracks on to Carter, and Carter's like, no. And then Olivia actually sees Carter say no and enforces that behavior, positive reinforcement. It's like, if you touch my boyfriend again without his consent, we'll be having a very different conversation. And Carter's like, and she's just like, I said what I said. But then obviously Courtney is embarrassed because she cracked on to her boyfriend's teammate. And then this is before he found out she was cheating. So anyways, Courtney comes back at the end of this book and is just like, you dropped your phone, Carter. Bitch. Logged on, sent all of the photos, the explicit photos, to herself so that she had some sort of revenge thing she had going on, which is illegal. Carter doesn't know how to communicate that to Olivia, and so he's like, well, what do you want? And Courtney's like, all I want is for me to be on your arm with one of my friends. Photographers take some photos, they publish some articles, and it's assumed that you're cheating on Olivia, and I want to wreck your relationship the same way you wrecked mine. And Carter's like, that is fucked up, but Olivia will never forgive me if she finds out that I was so careless with her and my privacy and her photos and her body. So he goes along with it instead of just communicating, which is straight to jail. I would be on the phone, obviously after telling Courtney, yeah, sure, because you don't want to trigger any like emotional responses of like rash behavior. So you're just like, yeah, okay, take the photos, get what she wants. Then I'd be straight on the way home, tell Olivia everything while on the phone to a lawyer and get her arrested because it's illegal. That's what I would have done. But no, Carter is a man and a moron. But he's got Labrador energy, and so he's like easy to forgive him because he's just got puppy dog eyes and he means well, and he's always coming from a place of like meaning well. Meanwhile, Olivia's teaching PE and the high school boys in her class are just like, hey miss, we found out that you're dating Carter Beckett. How long's that gonna last, and are you a puck bunny? And she's like, excuse me? She can hold her own. The big thing is that she's 5'1", so she's short and he's tall, and it's like a tally smally couple, and we've all got like, you know. Anyways, it's super messy, it's super good, but a good foundation to the series. Book number 2 is Jenny and Garrett's story. Garrett being one of the teammates and Jenny being Carter's sister. Now this has the, obviously, like, Carter being the protective older brother is like, touch my sister and die. So Garrett, even though he's close with Carter, can't exactly be like, hey bro, I'm dating your sister. So there's like a secret element here. She's a dancer, professional dancer at dance school. She's about to get her degree at university. She has a dance partner who is so annoying that I forgot his name. He's so, he gave me the ick. Simon? Is it Simon? I think it's, yes, Simon. Oh my God. You ever have that male best friend who's like, takes it a step too far? Can you take me seriously when I say no the first time? So it's a lot of that. He flirts with her a lot, and it's not like she can get a different dance partner because she's been ostracized from the other dancers because everyone thinks that she's getting a free ride because her brother is Carter Beckett, NHL hockey star, and they're not really seeing her for her worth. And she has specific trauma and attachment issues and trust issues around that, specifically about being his sister and people getting close to her just to get to him. Like at one point the barista is just like, you're kind of cute, can I get your number? And then in the second breath is like, you're Carter Beckett's sister, right? Do you think that? And she's just like, for fuck's sake, like, can anyone just see me as me? Meanwhile, Garrett, even though he sleeps around a little bit, his eyes always drift to Jenny. The book starts with Carter buying Jenny her own apartment for her birthday, giving her her own independence, away from home, kind of setting her up to be like an adult. She's in the final year of university, she's about to finish. So he's like, okay, well, here's an apartment. Just so you know, one of my teammates lives on, up at the top. So he'll be keeping an eye on you because protective older brother. And she's like, Carter, I don't need a babysitter. And he's like, well, tough, because Garrett's up there. And she's just like, Garrett? She has a little bit of a crush and he has a little bit of a crush. She's like, oh fuck, it could have been anyone else and I would have been fine, but it's bloody Garrett, so you know. Now I'm gonna have to avoid him at all costs. Speak of the devil, door across the hallway opens. Out comes Garrett with his little situation. Not so much a situationship, they have an agreement. Her name is Emily. So then Jenny is just like, oh my god, I swear, if these walls are thin, I am screwed, because I don't want anything to do with like hearing his name or hearing him doing extracurricular activities with my neighbor. It's the anniversary of her and Carter's dad's death. And Garrett's just like, I know the date, so I'm gonna check in on her. And she's like a mess. She's in sweats and she's been crying and her face is all puffy. And he's like, I got you coffee. And if you don't like coffee, I also got you a hot chocolate. And she's like a mess and she's like, I can't even find my stuffed bunny. And the bunny was wearing a locket. And he's just like, oh my God, girl's crying. I don't know what to do. So she's just like, well, can you come in and help me find my stupid fucking bunny? And he's like, okay. So he's opening boxes looking for the pink fluffy bunny that's going to make her stop crying so that he can, you know, get out of her hair. He sees a box called toys and he goes, oh, there you go. Opens the toys, expecting to find a bunny. Turns out the box is not fluffy toys, it's extracurricular toys. And he because he's just like, it flings and then they all like go everywhere and one of them hits him in the face and he's like, well, that happened. And then she's mortified and they're both like, stop, don't look at it, just leave my apartment. So it's a lot of that for the first 100 pages. It's a lot of, oh my God, embarrassing. Then they're just like, well, we can be friends. And then it's like, well, we can be situationally together, just like you and Emily, except if that's the case, then I don't want you seeing like situationally exclusive. And they don't want to put a label on it because they've both got commitment issues. And it's a lot of like, will they go official? Won't they go official? Like, and then it's like, you don't own me. And then it's like all of this stuff, jealousy. But we finally get there. And then they're just like, I don't want to just do this situationally, I want to get together. And then they do get together, but then they have the issue of like, how do we tell Carter? Because we haven't been able to tell him that we're doing this situationally because he will flip out because he's protective older brother. But also then we find out that there's a reason. It's not just because their dad died and he stepped up to be man of the house. It's also because of something that probably YouTube won't allow and probably something that will be really triggering for people to hear about. Something happened to her with her first boyfriend that was filmed and put online. Faceless, but not nameless. Named as Carter Beckett's sister's tape. And so ever since then, she's like, well, I'm not going to date. I'm not going to have sex. And Carter feels responsible because he's just like, I should have been there, but instead I was, you know, hockeying. And when you're hockeying, you have to play at different cities. So I wasn't there for my sister. That's why he's protective older brother. Not just because he had to step up. So then he really doesn't want Garrett because she's been hurt before. So then Garrett's just like, okay, well, we have to handle this delicately. And then Carter having no boundaries, which we know he has no boundaries because he's just like a Labrador and he just jumps all over people and gets himself in everyone's business. He has no boundaries. He lets himself into Garrett's place and Jenny's there. He's like, and you guys didn't tell me? And then he leaves and then he's just silent treatmenting these two, and Jenny's distraught and devastated because she's just like, I just want my brother because my dance partner Simon kissed me on stage non-consensually because it's like a romantic dance, and I told him no, I told him I wasn't comfortable 1,000 times in rehearsal, and then on the actual stage he kissed me, curtain falls down, smack him in the face. She really wants her brother, but he's not there. He's not around. Then Jenny is offered a place in Toronto to teach, which was her dream job. At least it was. It's not anymore, but she hasn't told anyone that her dream has changed. And she's put up for it by one of her professors. So in the background this whole time, she's like, do I take this job? Do I not? She's trying to think about it, but then things progressing with Garrett, and she's like, well, if I take the job, then I'm away from him and we have to do long distance, and I might cut out for that. I'm not even used to having a boyfriend. Book 2 I really liked. It was just a little bit underbaked, just like with Consider Me, in terms of the structure and the writing and the quality of the narrative. On a technicality, the writing wasn't there yet. Insert Unravel Me. Now, Unravel Me is Rosie and Adam's story. Adam, you'll remember from book 1, is also on the team, had the ex Courtney who cheated on him, also cracked onto Carter and his other teammates, and is just an awful human being. I don't understand cheating, just at that point just break up with someone, like. Anyways, important thing, high school sweetheart. So they were together for 7 years, and it's like a long time, and blah 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 blah. So he's a sweetheart, and this whole time he's not been a fuckboy. He's not the fuckboy. Unlike these three who, you know, get around, which again, fine, have your slut era. Adam is not one of those boys. He's not one of those people who's into casual sex. He needs to build a relationship first. So in this book, he starts going on dates. He's on Tinder, but everyone's just like, oh, you're the famous hockey player, right? Didn't you just get signed for like a $10 million bonus? See, Courtney didn't have that problem because Courtney was his high school sweetheart before he was famous. Now he's famous. He has the issue that Carter had in book 1 of like, oh my God, how am I meant to know who actually likes me for me, and how am I gonna know who likes me for my money? Insert Rosie, single mum, veterinary student in her final year doing her placement, also volunteering at a shelter, has no time for hockey, not interested in sports, has no idea who he is. They run into each other at a leash-free dog park. Hello, love. So the thing about Adam is that he was adopted, and we know that from book 1, he was adopted quite young as well, so he wasn't in the system for that long. Insert Rosie, also adopted but aged out, so 2 adoption stories, very, very different. Now from book 1, we know that Adam spends his time at one of the adoption center houses, foster houses place, and he donates his time and money, and he drags the other team members to go as well, to spend time with the kids, to make sure that, you know, they feel loved because they deserve it. Throughout this book and the previous book as well, with Garrett and Jenny's story, we see Adam grow close to one of the younger girls, Lily, and Lily is very selective with who she trusts, but she seems to have some sort of like trust bond with Adam. So he doesn't take that lightly. He's always there. He's always giving her reassurance that she's safe and that he will come back and see her, because obviously disorganized attachment, she's worried that everyone's going to leave her. So she's quite fragile and she needs a solid family. Spoiler alert, by the end of this book, Rosie and Adam adopt Lily, because Adam is just like, I want kids, and Rosie already having kids is just like, yes. But also Rosie, coming from a similar background, having aged out, also develops a connection to Lily when she meets her, and is just like, Adam, please, we need to take this child home. So they end up fostering and then adopting Lily, and it's really, really sweet. But anyways, the main point of conflict in this book, and the main like, what's going to happen, like the problem issue, isn't just Courtney coming back and being like, we actually slept together and I'm pregnant with your baby, even though you say we didn't, and you actually just too drunk to remember, because look at this photo that I took of me in your bed with you, and it's like he's asleep in that photo. Like, my brain would just be like, okay, so while I was asleep, you came and sat next to me and took a photo. But not Adam. Adam's just like, oh my God, I don't remember. Spoiler alert, it's not his. So Courtney we have to deal with as well, because Courtney can't let go of the fact that Adam's moved on and that she's been publicly humiliated for cheating. Cheaters get what they deserve. Now, the other problem is that Adam hasn't told Rosie that he's a hockey player and a famous one, and so she doesn't know, and she's just like, wow, I'm getting to know this guy, and then they sleep together, and she's just like, oh my god, I can't believe, like, I've been through like the trials and tribulations of life, and I've just been battered and hammered by life, and now I've got this guy. And then he surprises her at the clinic, and her roommates are just like, don't you know who that is? And she's like, no. And they're like, that's Adam Lockwood, and he's a hockey player. And she's just like, oh my god, why wouldn't he? It can't be him, because like, why wouldn't he tell me that? I mean, so then there's conflict. The other conflict, obviously, is that she's a single parent. Now, unlike Adam, she says, oh my god, that's important information for you to know, and tells him on the second date that she's a single mom, that she co-parents with Fuckface, who I can't remember. I just named him Fuckface because he's a dick, and he already walked out on them, but then was just like, I want to spend time with my son. You know how fathers are. Anyways, he is negligent and is always calling her, being like, can you come get Connor early, because all he's doing is crying. And she's just like, did you hold him? Did you feed him? Does he need, like, what does he need? And he's like, I don't know, babies don't know shit, like, they don't need shit, he doesn't communicate with me. And she's like, well, maybe if you tried. Anyways, he goes to the bar and leaves Connor in the crib alone. And Rosie is just like, where is my son? And he's just like, well, I locked the door so no one can go in and steal him. So they run to the house. Adam breaks in because he's like strong. And Rosie runs to where Connor is like crying and screaming. And it turns out it's because he's flipped his crib and landed and his head is bleeding. And Fuckface is just like, oh my god, what an freak accident. Like, I still want to see my son. I love him. And she's like, just because you say you love him doesn't mean you love him. Like, love is also actions. It's also showing up for your son and giving him cuddles and making him his favorite food and actually knowing what his favorite food is. Like, what are you feeding him? Like, anyway, she has a full dig at him, which, you know. And Adam is just obviously a sweetheart who's good with kids. This one felt a bit more love at first sight. Like, yes, Carter and Olivia was love at first sight as well, but it was a very like sexual driven connection, whereas Adam and Rosie kind of take their time a bit more because they have stuff that they need to work out individually and together as a couple. Very, very cute, but also in this book we see more of Jackson. Now Jackson, excuse me, Jackson is introduced in the second book. He's a transfer. He's been transferred from another team who got him as a transfer from another team. So he's just been passed on because he fights a lot, and like he gets to the point where the team's like, I don't want to deal with him. So Vancouver Vipers have taken him in. He assimilates well into the team, but he kind of keeps his distance. He's the biggest fuckboy out of them all, including Carter. But in this one, we see him have a bit of a softer side. He adopts one of the cats who Rosie, who's at the clinic, and Rosie helps him adopt the cat. The cat is polydactyl and has an extra toe, and he names it Mittens, and Mittens is so cute. We also see him help Rosie once Rosie figures out that Adam's a hockey player. She has a bit of a melt and he gives her a hug, and she describes it as a very warm hug. So then the reader is just like, hang on a second, maybe this tough guy attitude isn't all what it's cracked up to be. Maybe there's a soft puppy inside. And then we get Fall With Me, which is the fourth and final book that just recently came out. And this book wraps up all the other books so nicely, as well as giving Jackson his own story. This is my favorite out of all the books, not just because these three had personal triggers and they were a bit harder to read. Didn't have any personal triggers in this book. Yay me. But if you have allergies that result in anaphylaxis, and or you know someone who's died from anaphylaxis, this might be a bit too triggering for you. She has a tree nut allergy. She wears an allergy bracelet, and we find out that Jackson's childhood best friend, who he played hockey with, died from a bee sting while with Jackson. Two of them playing outside, didn't bring the EpiPen, got stung by a bee. Jackson races back into the house, races back, does the EpiPen, already too late. So that we find out 3/4 of the way into the book. However, it starts very, very differently. We start with Jackson, Playboy Jackson, who, you know, has a threesome in book 3. Adam walks out into the hallway of his house and Jackson walks out with 3 girls. So Jackson's very, you know, open to experimentation and higher levels of intimacy, I would describe it as. So he's basically a freak in the sheets. The book starts, he invites someone to Cabo because he's just like, I just need a holiday. I need to get laid all weekend. I just need to get it out of my system. And he can't remember her name. Her name's Brielle. He keeps on calling her like Brianna, Brienne. She's like, it's Brielle. Like, you should know that by now. And he's like, well, I'm not gonna know you long enough to remember your name. Like, he's a bit of a dick. Meanwhile, they're sharing a balcony, honeymoon suites. On the other side is Lennon, who's like on her own. And she's just like, can you guys stop fighting? Because this is meant to be my honeymoon and I'm not enjoying it. I'm not having a good time already because I'm here alone, obviously. But if you guys could just shut the fuck up so that I can lie here in the sun, get some sunbaking done. And Jackson immediately is intrigued. He's like, why is a beautiful woman not being fucked senseless on her honeymoon? So he's having that as a thought, and then Brielle's just like, why are you checking out the neighbor? And he's like, because she's hot. And Brielle's like, that's it, we're through, I'm leaving. So then she leaves, and then he goes to the bar later that night, and Lennon is there drinking, and he's just like, oh my gosh, like, what a coincidence running into you. What happened at your wedding? And she's like, oh, just leave me alone. And he's just like, you want to play Never Have I Ever? And she's like, what are you in high school? And he's like, come on, let's play. And then he's like, never have I ever left somebody at the altar. And she doesn't drink, and he's like trying to get it out of her. They drink and drink and drink, and they end up in the hotel room and they just bang it out. And then he's like, I think that was the best orgasm of my life. And she's like, okay, Jason. She see what she did there, because she said a different name and he's been calling Brielle, and she knows he's been calling Brielle different names because she's the neighbor. Anyways, she leaves him, gets on a plane, and Jackson is just like, I don't think we'll ever be able to top that. Meanwhile, she's relocated because her ex-fiance slept with one of the waitresses at the rehearsal dinner of the wedding. And so she cancelled the wedding 16 hours before they were meant to go through with it. She was like, fuck no, I'm not marrying a cheater. Like, I have self-respect. Like, this is a close relationship. So no, you cannot go fuck the waitress at our rehearsal dinner and disrespect me like that. So she decides to move to Vancouver because a job opens up as the photographer for the Vancouver Vipers. You see where this is going? Jackson flies back from Cabo to Vancouver, ready to play hockey. And then, new photographer, it's Lennon. And he's like, oh my God. And instead of being like, oh my God, wow, fate, we found each other, he's in denial because he's not going to fuck someone twice because that's just against his rule. And she's in denial because she's like, well, I'm not going to sleep with someone who I'm working with. And also, this is like, I'm swearing off all men. Like, this is my no men era because I am just getting out of a relationship. However, her apartment floods her apartment floods and she's got nowhere to go. So she puts all of her shit in her car and she's like, my day can't get any worse. My month can't get any worse. I mean, I've lost my home, my ex-fiance, I've lost everything now, I've losing my apartment. And she puts everything in her car because they're going to a carnival party thingy. And she's feeling real sorry for herself, feeling really down. She's missing her Mimi. And then she sees like these little key lime pie tart thingies. And she's like, oh my God, I'm missing my Mimi's cooking. So she eats the pie. Crust is not made from flour butter. It's actually made from almond flour, which obviously she's allergic to. So she ends up having like an anaphylactic reaction and everyone's like, oh my God, what to do? And Jackson's just like, where's the EpiPen? And she looks at her camera bag and he's like, oh, of course. So he administers the EpiPen, she's fine, but he's like, oh my God, she almost died. And he's having like flashbacks to his childhood, which we don't know at the time, we just know he's having flashbacks to something. He waits for 4 hours in the waiting room and then the doctor discharges her and says, you know, you can't drive. And she's just like, that's okay, I'll get like an Uber. And Jackson's just like, no, I'm here, I'll take you home. And she's just like, actually, can I get some stuff from my car first? And her whole plan is that he's going to leave her at her car and she's going to take her car to a Walmart and sleep. He takes her back to the car and she goes, oh, thanks for everything. And he goes, well, you're just getting something from your car and then I'm going to drive you home. And she's like, please leave. And he's like, were you not there when the doctor said don't drive for 24 hours? I have to drive you. I'm not leaving you alone. Then he sees that her car is full of all of her suitcases and he's like, Lennon, why is your car full of all of your suitcases? And then she cracks and she tells him everything and he's like, guess you're staying with me. So he puts all of her stuff in the car and, well, not all of her stuff because he drives like a wanky sports car which doesn't actually have a function and doesn't have enough space. So they end up back at his place and he's just like, why don't you just stay with me? And she's like, well, thanks for letting me stay here. It'll be like a night or two until they fix the pipes. And he's like, you think they're going to fix an entire upstairs bathroom in 2 days? And she's like, yeah. And he's like, it's gonna be a while and you can stay here. Like, I'd rather you stay here and save money. And she's like, well, I don't want to impose. But anyways, then Mittens, the cat who he adopted in book 3, you'll remember, is there. And she's like, oh my God, what a cute little kitty. They end up in like a roommate situation. But that doesn't last long because he sleeps naked and she doesn't like to wear underwear under her shorts. So you can see where it goes. But the whole thing with book 4 is the time constraints of her having to move out when her apartment is ready. She's given an ETA of about 2 months and she's like, it's too long. And he's like, no, just stay. In those 2-3 months, they end up not just sleeping together, but like exclusively just hanging out because it's home. And because she's the photographer, unlike these 3 books where it's long distance when they're on the road and in different cities, because she's the photographer and she works with them, they don't have that issue. So she's always there, even on the buses, on the planes, she's there. And so Jackson doesn't have that time away to kind of process. So yeah, it's really sweet. Out of all 4 of them, this one was my favorite just because Jackson's inner monologue actually sounds different to the other books. I think that that's a bit of a weak point in Becka Mack's writing. I think that she has a male inner monologue style and a female inner monologue style. And these books could have been about any of them. And the inner monologue style, like the voice, sounds the same. Carter, Garrett, and Adam all have the same inner monologue. There's no differential thoughts that separate them, if you know what I mean. Jackson, on the other hand, has his signature dialogue as opposed to these 2. So good job, Becka Mack. You've pulled this one off in terms of like structurally. So you don't just have an amazing plot and character development, structurally and technically the writing is better in this one as well. Also, Lennon is a bicon and listens to audiobooks of all genres and pairings. So she's as open as Jackson is, so they will have wonderful, wonderful life together. It's not just the writing, but Jackson as a character. Jackson as a man, it's giving Fox from Hook, Line and Sinker. It's giving Jack from Love Theoretically. I'm putting Jackson in the same box. He hears about her not getting pink tulips and then he gets her pink tulips. He hears about her talking about how all she wanted was a telescope and no one gave her a telescope, and then he gave her a telescope. She talked about wanting to go see the Northern Lights. He took her to see the Northern Lights. Not just that, the first night where he's driving her home to his house and she's having a shower after just, you know, coming home from hospital, she tiptoes out and she's like, what is that noise? He's going through his pantry and throwing out 90% of his food. Anything that has tree nuts or traces of tree nuts, he's throwing it out, not risking her life. She's also biracial, so she has thick curly hair and has a whole routine. My partner has also got big, thick curly hair. It is a method. There are steps. She, at one point, is so tired that she starts the hair care routine and she's like, I don't have the energy. And he goes, well, that's fine, sit. And then he goes to the bathroom, gets all of her products, gets the hairdryer and the diffuser, and he gets everything set up. And she's like, what are you doing? And he's like, I'll help you. I've seen you do your routine enough times that I can finish it for you. And he's doing it, and then he diffuses it, and by the end it's like wonky and uneven, and but like the curls are, and then just a silk wrap. She's like, thank you. And he's just like, no worries. And she's like, it's not like perfect, but he tried, and some of the curls are a bit frizzled, but he tried, and he's just so cute. And then he gets silk pillowcases and sheets for both beds, even though she's like, it's fine, I have a silk hair wrap. And he's like, no, you will have silk bed sheets because I told you so. She has a great relationship with the cat Mittens, and like gets Mittens his own Instagram and like does him up in all of these like outfits, and they just have really cute banter. Like this one, there's no conflict with each other because they can both communicate to a degree. So they don't have the miscommunication trope. They just work really well together. They're my favorite couple. Another thing that happens is because Adam, who you remember, grabs all of the teammates to like hang out with the foster kids who, you know, need time, affection, attention, energy, and happiness. Jackson ends up getting close with one of the kids, what's her name? Sarah. He ends up getting close to Sarah, and Sarah's like, why do you think no one wants to adopt me? I'm 13 now. Is it because I'm not good with like school and my grades, and my mom died from cancer and her boyfriend gave me up because I was too slow, and why do you think I need to try harder? And his heart like breaks a little bit. So I was like thinking maybe Jackson fosters / adopts her. But then I was like, that won't work because like Lennon, like yes, they want kids eventually, but like they just got together and they're not got the same like commitment to the adoption process that Adam and Rosie have, where they can just jump into it because they know the system. Anyways, I was like, something has to happen with Sarah because Becka Mack isn't just giving us this exposition for no reason. Then we find out that because of his childhood best friend died from the anaphylactic shock from the bee sting, his parents, the friend's parents, saw him at the funeral and then never saw him again. And he's kind of internalized that as they blame him for their son's death. And that's what's kind of led to his disorganized attachment as well to his self-worth, and why he gets into fights because he doesn't think he's good enough, and everyone's just going to replace him because he's been moved from team to team. But then, you know, once that's all out in the open, Lennon actually gets in contact with his grandma, and the grandma's still in contact with the parents. And after, you know, it's been like 16 years, the parents actually come to one of the final games and they apologize to him and say like, look, it was a toll on their marriage. They went to marriage counseling, therapy, they've done all of it. They were even going to adopt. They had got their adoption license 10 years ago, but nothing ever felt correct because they're still mourning the son. But they have Jackson's jersey and they have enamel pins for each of his teams. They've been watching the whole time, and I bawled like a fucking baby because it was such a sweet reunion moment, and they've been there the whole time. They just haven't, they've physically been there, but they haven't emotionally been there, and they haven't like spoken to him. So they end up adopting Sarah, and what a way to end the series. Everything's been tied up, there's no loose ends. It was an emotional roller coaster. I actually, like, books 1, 2, 3, good, didn't cry. This book, I cried. I cried because we also find out that Rosie and Adam are expecting a baby as well. So they've got Connor, Lily, and then they're expecting a baby, and then Olivia, who's pregnant in book 2. And part of the reason why Carter and Garrett reconnect and he kind of is like, okay, you have my blessing to date my sister, is because Olivia has a baby. So it kind of becomes like this really large dysfunctional family. Like, we start all the way at the start. We start with Emmett and Kara introducing Carter and Olivia. And then from then it just grows. Like, the family just grows, but it's not like new characters are just being thrust in and then the old ones are getting left out. Like, it's so cohesive. And you don't get that from the first read of Consider Me because you haven't got the other books yet and you haven't got the other context yet. But now I'm rereading Consider Me and already I'm crying from like just getting, you know, to chapter 16. So it's a very, very cohesive series. I believe that it's just going to be 4 books. I hope it's just going to be 4 books. I don't think that it needs to be touched. Now that it's finished, I don't want it to be touched. I don't want there to be a 5th book, because even if there was a 5th book, who would be the lead to? I'd rather not. Like, I guess it could kind of be Emily, the roommate from Play With Me, because we kind of didn't get a wrap up on her story, but I don't really want one. Like, I'm fine with the 4 that we got. Like, oh my god, wait a second. Emmett and Kara. We don't have an Emmett and Kara book because they're already together in book 1, but because they've been trying for kids and they haven't been able, and Kara hasn't been able to get pregnant yet. Okay, if book 5 is in the works, it has to be an Emmett and Kara book, because even though we know them and love them, we haven't got their internal monologues or POVs. So it could be like a really cute, they're already together story, and it could be like about, maybe they do like an IVF journey. Oh my god, stop. Well, Becka Mack, like, there's an idea. You probably have already had it. But yeah, would I recommend this series? Yes, like I said, I read 4 books in 4 days, but like, it was so addictive. That's it for this video. If you want more book content like this, subscribe and hit the like button, comment so that we can discuss. Other than that, I did mention in the last video that I want to do a rewrite of the Umbrella Academy season 4. That is taking a lot longer than I thought it would, so it's probably not going to be here for a while. But if that interests you, subscribe for that later down the track.